had to invest in it. So possibly maybe my computer's a little more robust, but oh, here she is. Nick, can you see her better now?
She's a shadow to me.
She's still a shadow. Is it the kind of red shadow thing, or is it something different? They have like a cloud.
And I can see the outline of her arm shadows, and I can see the shadows in her hair.
Uh-huh.
But it's like somebody had spray painted her blue.
Oh, blue. Okay, and Eduardo's saying the same thing. Yeah, we're going to stay here for about a half hour. Then we'll go back to Marion. And we'll be there. Oh, Scott, I have to admit, your shoes seem to be going in different directions with me.
Yeah, started that last week. I don't know what I did. I've reset my avatar 3 times, and I have broken ankles.
Oh, well, you know what happens? Your shoes actually generally have a shoe base and then something over it. They're an attachment. And sometimes it depends on how the artist sets the. Actually, I'm seeing that with everybody's shoes. Hey, none of us look perfect in real life, so our avatars are going to have a few glitches. But yeah, no, I can see. I'm trying to think what shoes I have. I tend to get giving things away, and then before I look at it, I have a strange outfit. I had sneakers on before, and I said, oh, I had to try to get a little better. A gaming video card? I don't know. See, Jeremy has the best. And Jeremy, your avatar was literally hanging up in space there. I think the other ones. Yeah, you guys, maybe you're falling before. Let me see myself. Anyway, Dr. Alon's avatar, I think, with a nice dress on. So we'll see. Nicola, you want to take the floor? I'll turn my mic off, and she's got some things in mind, and then we'll go back to Marion for the last hour and a half.
Yes, I'll be happy to. Just a moment. I'm just sorting out a few things that I wanted to provide and discuss. So if you'll give me just a moment, I will bring up a couple of things. So hi, everyone. We're going to talk about the possibilities of art in virtual worlds, arts and media. And of course, as you can probably imagine from seeing everything in this world, the artistic possibilities are frankly endless. This is an incredible forum for using and creating arts and a whole wide range of media, old school, new school, 3D, 2D, and so on. We've had a number of students that have actually created full worlds and large interactive projects that are arts-based. And a couple of us faculty in Mallet have a very strong arts-based background. Dr. Susan Forbes, who unfortunately couldn't be here and was going to be giving this presentation, has a background in theater and the performing arts. I have a background in the performing arts as well. And Mark Lewis, Professor Lewis, who will be coming later on to talk to you about game design, also has a very strong background in arts and design. I mean, as he mentioned earlier today, he has a theater design background, but he also has a strong visual arts background as well. My own personal background is in the performing arts and digital media arts. I teach both at the undergraduate and graduate level. I teach courses that are related to the performing arts. I work with a tremendous number of mentees, both undergraduate and graduate, who are very strong artists coming in, dancer choreographers, filmmakers, fashion industry folks, visual artists. I'm working with a painter right now. My current mentees include people who are highly accomplished in their fields, working in film production, dancers and choreographers. I have an animator as one of my advanced students. So as you can imagine, we have a program here that really supports a lot of these development in the arts. And we've had a number of students in Mallet who over time have decided to not just focus on a few learning design projects with some arts component, but who also decided to develop a huge virtual world devoted entirely to arts-based environment or to exhibit their artistic work and so on. So there are tremendous possibilities for this in the program and in the virtual worlds. So before I move forward to talk about a little bit of examples of the kinds of things that have been in Second Life, the kind of things that we're doing in Kitely, let me just mention that we do have, as part of the Master of Arts in Learning and Emerging Technologies, a track and also a graduate certificate in emerging media and technology for the arts. So if you do all 4 of the courses required for this, you receive an advanced graduate certificate in that area. And if you are tying this into your Master of Arts, then it also becomes part of your Master of Arts as the track within your Master of Arts program. And if you were to take this certificate, which is called Emerging Media and Technology for the Arts, you would take a course in performance theory, in emerging media and the arts, theory and practice, and an elective course of your choice, of which we have many, and then the digital media arts and technology course that I tend to teach, that sometimes if I'm not available when I'm on sabbatical, for example, then Dr. Forbes teaches that one. So we do have these courses that really and truly allow you to immerse into the development of very artistic projects or add an artistic component to the work that you are doing, whether it be in STEM, as Dr. O'Connor pointed out, or in education proper in the social science area, and so on. What this means is that you become immersed not just in the understanding of, how do you create something artistically within the virtual world and other environments, but giving arts-based considerations to your work, whether it be in an educational focus or whether it be for something that is purely, let's say, an artist's exhibit. We look at sort of how the philosophy and aesthetic of art can be applied to the teaching of art and other elements, and that there is a whole arts-based research component that you can do research as you're developing artistic components, that you can use artistic creations and artistic elements as part of the research that you're doing. That it isn't just that research, would be reading scholarly research articles in education, for example. There is a whole other component to this. And so in our program and in the virtual worlds environment, there's so many opportunities for you to be able to do this. And yes, let me stop here. And I see that Saley's inviting folks to have a chair. Let me just bring out a couple more. Here we go. A couple more chairs for those of you who don't have one, and I'll do that real quick before I go ahead and and that way, if folks need additional chairs, we have them. There we go. Okay. So again, you do have that possibility of focusing on arts within the program that we're doing. And artistic consideration for digital media of any environment, 2D or 3D, are very similar to what you would do in considerations for traditional arts, for the fine arts and other arts. But what we discuss is, how do you digitize those? How do you take that into a virtual environment, and what does that mean? I currently have a student who's taking digital media arts and technologies, who's a wonderful artist, and she works in sculptures and mixed media, and she does incredible work. And so what she's doing is that she's figuring out, how does she take something that she usually does in a 3D way and integrate it with sound and video and other elements to then create something that becomes a fully immersive experience for the audience that comes in. A few years ago, several of us involved in virtual worlds at Empire State College decided that for the big Saratoga Arts Festival, which is an annual event, we would open up our physical alumni house. We have this wonderful house that is the alumni house on 28 Union Avenue, that we would have a real live performance there. But that as we were having that real life performance, we had a replica of 28 Union created in Second Life, that we would then stream the performances into the Second Life environment at the same time. And while that was happening, we also had a German classical singer from Berlin who performed in Berlin as an avatar in Second Life, and then that was streamed and shown directly in the physical space in Second Life, in the real world, in the actual alumni house space that we had set up for the performance. What's going on? We have live dance and live music happening on the ground in Saratoga during the Arts Festival. That was being streamed virtually into Second Life. I had created avatars who represented all of the performers, and then they were able to perform as their avatars in Second Life. In the meantime, we had live people singing in Germany, streaming that through to Second Life, and then bringing that into the real world. So the whole idea is that as far as performance goes, in the performing arts as well as the visual arts, there are very many ways that you can mix and match reality, what we call mixed reality, with the virtual to create extraordinary levels of performance that are truly immersive. And earlier on, Dr. O'Connor talked about the augmented reality possibilities. So you have possibilities for creating arts with augmented realities, with virtual realities entirely in the immersive space, or using mixed realities where you have some virtual, some grounded in the real world, and some augmented, and any combination thereof. In Second Life, I would like to just point out, for those of you who are interested in going into something that like that world, or you could actually just, look at the websites. I'll provide those here. There are a few things I would like to highlight. One is that when I was actively involved in participant observation research on the Isle of Worms, which was the Dragon Realm, with one of the most successful communities in Second Life, which is why I chose to work in that environment for my research. We as a group in that environment regularly hosted all kinds of festivals and arts-related events. And in that, you would have dance performers that would come in and perform virtually in this space. You would have all kinds of musicians and rock bands and singers, whether it be someone who specialized in New Age, someone who came in and sang, classic rock, or some group that combined classical dance traditions with Asian dance traditions virtually. All of the above would be the kinds of things that you would be able to experience live at a concert in a virtual concert venue as your avatar. These kinds of events at the time were extremely popular and very well attended. And the community base in the Isle of Worms was, at the time, in its heyday, some 2,500 members or more strong worldwide. And if you can imagine, all of these people had friends, both virtually and in the real world. And what happened is that people were coming in from all over and bringing their friends to these kinds of events. And the musicians and the artists were actually being paid in the equivalent of real world money to do these performances. The festival events actually raised a tremendous amount of money that was then sent to charity after the performers had been paid. So there would be a performance fee given to, let's say, the primary musician or dance performer. And then all remaining funds would be transferred into, at the time, British pounds, because they were going to St. Tiggy Winkles, which was a wildlife animal rescue hospital in England. And many of the members of the Isle of Worms were very strong supporters of animal welfare and well-being. And therefore, we had all decided that this was a cause to which we wanted to contribute. So artistic events, live events, concerts, and environments created in support of charitable fundraising and organizations were at the time actually a very large component of social activity in Second Life, and actually continue to be so. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit from there to talk about other sort of considerations for artistic works in Second Life or Kitely or beyond. I have mentioned this to some of you who've been in my courses, but I would like to highlight again. There is an environment and a space that was created before Second Life and then imported into Second Life, and then has now been exported elsewhere. And there's a full archive on this. This amazing place that combines historical, literary, artistic, cultural references, and that housed a tremendous amount of artistic components as well as museum-like components and live reenactment components of a period that was very physical, activities that were real in history, but that managed to superbly recreate them, is Virtual Harlem. A magnificent project. And let me simply put here for you the link to the archive. Dr. Brian Carter created this and continued with the environment and the development. But if you take a look, you'll see, especially with what they were doing with the Cotton Club, that recreated that famous venue and then would recreate concerts in that venue, their ability to really, at a very early stage, transfer real life historical and artistic as well as cultural components into the virtual world was extraordinary. And if you'll give me just a moment, I'm trying to bring up my browser. Yes, and we could do a whole course on what they did with Virtual Harlem. It is phenomenal, but fortunately, it's very well described and archived with a number of artifacts that demonstrate what it was. So I think that for those of you who are interested, you could really take a look at that. So the next thing I'd like to mention is that they actually had a virtual Shakespeare company in Second Life, performing realistically, but virtually, live Shakespeare performances at the time in Second Life. From what I gather looking at their website, they're no longer active in the way that they were, but at the time they were a very strong component of performance activities in Second Life. And the reason I mention Second Life so strongly is that it was, at the time, its leader in the field. And this was where communities gathered, and a number of artists, including very high-level artists such as Moby, were in that world doing all kinds of very interesting and engaged, sometimes world-class level performances, productions, and artistic creations. And so what they have done there is all replicable here and in any virtual world environment. The biggest challenge is not so much the tools, because we have them. It's really more the question of how do you create the kind of community that supports that level of engagement in arts and culture. And frankly, I think in something like Kitely, we're not quite there yet. And other worlds that started to be successful in this, such as InWorlds was one of the strongest ones, actually just collapsed because it had a financial issue that led to the closure of that world. So now, unless one is in Second Life, which in itself has gone past its heyday and is no longer as active a creative community as it once was, we would now be challenged to find the same level of arts and culture community unless we create it here ourselves. The next level of type of arts that were prevalent in virtual worlds is that, believe it or not, because of fantastic programs that allow you in 3D to create choreography and then import those into Second Life, because it is easy to create avatars and combine that with movement in a way that replicates real life movement, dance itself has been a hugely popular part of the Second Life and other virtual worlds cultures. The idea that people get together and dance. Well, Second Life Ballet, and I'll put you the link here so that you can see, was actually performing classical ballet as avatars in Second Life. And so you really do have the opportunity to see these virtual environments, virtual spaces supporting live performance in virtual worlds. And of course, bringing in the visual arts, whether it be 2D flat traditional mediums that such as watercolor and painting and so on, is very easy in the sense that an artist creating their works who would want to exhibit them in a virtual world such as Kitely could easily do that. But then there was also the component of recreating sculpture using 3D sculpture methods. And this is something that Marjorie, one of our students here, has actually done and created a virtual world in Kitely that exhibits this possibility, that demonstrates this possibility of how you can approach something like 3D sculpture in a virtual environment. It's called Sculpture Island, and Dr. O'Connor, I believe, mentioned this earlier today and provided links to that. But that is an excellent example of what you could do and how you could approach something like that. And a next level of all of this artistically is really something that we're not touching on, that we don't have time to touch on yet, but that is a whole different level, which is interaction design. So not only can you visually and physically create objects, environments, spaces, and movement in these worlds, but then you can design interactions between, from avatar to object, from object to object, from avatar to avatar, and so on, that then create or recreate a simulation of real world movement, whether it be in dance, whether it be theatrical. And of course, because there is this possibility of streaming sound into the virtual world, then you can also create music. And you've probably seen that some very creative folks have created pianos that actually play if you click on them. Here in the virtual world, and other replicas of instruments that actually will play their tunes because it's easy to import and program sound in this environment. And as I mentioned previously, there were a lot of people doing live concerts across all genres in the virtual world from the early stages, because socially we all love to get together to listen to music. It's one of our very common shared community experiences that are enjoyed across cultures, across the globe, and that is something that can easily be done here in this space. Yes, exactly, Saley, the piano that plays the key when clicked. I mean, it's amazing what people can do, how creative they can be, and how we can replicate that sort of thing in the virtual world. So I have actually supervised at least 2 projects by music professors in which they worked on something related to teaching music. And I have supervised several projects with people who teach in one form of the arts or another, and who have created something either in Kitely or Second Life, or something that isn't necessarily in the virtual world but ties into the virtual world, related to the performance of and or the teaching of music. So there are all kinds of possibilities and opportunities in the arts and in media here in the virtual world, but also working with all kinds of emergent tools. It doesn't have to be in the virtual world. It could be, as I mentioned, any number of approaches to the mixing and matching of modalities, or simply, taking what is done in the real world and then figuring out what's the best way to bring that into some sort of digital environment, and then giving it the considerations. Again, going back to what I talked about in the world building class, where we said, first consideration has to be what are the needs of your users, your learners for this, and the second tied into that is, and what are, if it's a learning piece, what are the learning goals? And then what approach, what tools and technologies, what strategies will best meet that particular learning goal? Or in some cases, it may be an artistic goal, a creative problem that you're solving. It could be that you're creating a component of a much larger work, a much larger piece. And in each of these, you always want to make sure that whatever you decide to do meets the needs of the user or learner and meets the goals of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So I'll stop there for now before we went off for a real quick activity, and simply ask if you have any questions or comments.
And I would just like to interject for a moment. A large part of the goal of this residency, this immersive experience, is to introduce things that are part of our program. And what you're hearing are, we don't expect you to be there right now. We do have the faculty, the expertise, the technologies to get you towards these goals. So we're hoping that each one of these presentations or your experience with us encourages you to dig deeper. You'll be working with your advisor, and you'll be looking at whether some of these really fit into where you're going. But we want to show you the vision where you can get to, and we'll be having coursework to help you get there. So we don't expect you to leave this and be able to do all of this. We do expect you to work with us over time to develop these skills and experiences yourself. So as you see, we have artists, we have many people that are part of the program, and you'll be meeting Mark in a little bit too. He's going to bring in another piece. We have Dr. Gal here, who brings in a lot about the blended learning. So we have a whole slew of very wizened faculty who have worked with a lot of different students over time, and we will encourage you to develop what you need. So that's just a comment. We don't have too much time left. This group has done some very basic building. I come from the STEM area where we let people play with the tools for a while before they actually get too far. So anyway, some of them have had some building, but we have to head back soon to Marion Island. And so I'll just turn off the mic and just remind people the next stop will be back to Marion. And there is the one area that is set up in a circle. I think many people have been there already, but I'll just remind them how to get there when we come back, and then we'll finish up with Mark. So anyway, thank you, and I will turn off my mic.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, thank you so much, Eileen. So Eileen, I'm not so sure. I mean, we only have about 4 minutes left. Do you think we still have time to try to do a hands-on activity? Do you want us to go right over to your circle right now? How would you like for us to proceed?
Given the short time, I'm inclined to have them go over to Marion and let me see. Can you? Yeah. Okay. I think you can hear me. Go over to Marion because it's taking a little bit of time, and I just set up for Dr. Lewis over there too, so he's going to be waiting. So I would say they did get their hands a little bit wet with some very basic building, and we have several advanced builders here already. So if you don't mind, maybe we'll, for time's sake, head over to Marion. Would that be okay with you?
Yes, I think that'll work. I think what I'd like to do is just very quickly demonstrate something. We've got 3 minutes. I want to do a quick demonstration of something, especially for the people who are new, so that you can see just how easy it is to do certain things. And then once you've seen that, we'll stop, we'll head right over to Marion Island. How does that sound? Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to do one quick, very brief demonstration. Don't worry about trying to follow. I just want you to see how easy it is to do something like this, and then you can learn this at a later point.
Testing, testing. My audio stopped too. Oops. It's Eileen. I think I see my sound, but
Hello?
I can't hear. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
I don't think
Okay.
anybody's talking.
All right. I was talking. So
Oh,
did you hear when I talked about the fact that you could turn this into, first of all, that there's a quick way to build a frame, and that I could have done that, but I don't have time to do that, so that it would fit beautifully in a frame. And also, there's a very quick and easy way to change this from an image to program it so it actually shows a video. So these are things that are very simple to do. Oh, I'm sorry, we lost sound for a little bit. Okay, so you didn't hear anything. What I was saying is that it's very simple to just throw a texture on a prim in the way that I did it. But the second stage of this would be for me to take the same prim, duplicate it, and then I would change the texture on that to a beautiful mahogany. I would use the tool that allows me to turn that flat piece of plank into an actual frame. I would put the two together so this image is in the frame and I would have a beautiful framed image. I'm not going to do it here because I don't have the time. And if instead of showing a photograph, I wanted to show a video of Fiona, the squirrel, then what I would do is I put the video in YouTube and then I would link it I would link this prim to the YouTube video. And then instead you would have embedded on this a video of Fiona. So the whole idea is that it is very easy to put together an art exhibit, because if you already have your images, you can just bring them in. You can integrate video. This is a step, is something that any one of you can learn how to master very quickly. So I just wanted to show that so that you see that not all artistic endeavors here are either time consuming or very challenging. This is something very easy that any of you could do. So we'll stop there. We'll move on. We're going to talk about STEM now. And I thank you for your time and attention and hope that you found this session useful.
Yes, and I would be clapping if I could. I think I'm going to stay here for right now. Thank you so much, Dr. Alan. She brings beauty and aesthetics into our work. And so, yeah, and we do, if you remember Control G, you might find a clapping gesture. Thank you very much. We're running down towards the end, and we're going to have a STEM activity, which is really more to be a group activity. So you don't have to know STEM to do it, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, just kind of a collection, a multidisciplinary look at the different areas. But for now, if you could open your map, and you're getting a lot of cheers, if you could open your map on the bottom, type in Marian, M-A-R-I-A-N, and then once it comes into view, after you click find, and I know not everybody knows how to do this, so I'm kind of reminding everybody, the place, I see a group of people are actually in the place where we started out. Well, why don't we just go back there for a minute, and where you see the green dots, and I'll launch you onto our penultimate phase. But thank you very much, and I think if it's okay with Dr. Lon, she will let us come back and visit her islands. They really are a treat for the eyes and really show you how art and science and technology can get us all together. I'll see you on the other island.
Absolutely.
Thank
Anytime
you
want to come visit, they're open.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'll just give it a minute until everything gets set up, and my island is still drawing itself. Okay, I think we have most folks back here. We're going to come back to this seat shortly at 2. Well, actually, if you can get back here about, let's say 1:50, give 10 minutes before the 2 o'clock speaker starts, and we can debrief from your experience. What I'm going to have you do is I'll send you out in teams. And I think a fair number of you have been in my classes recently. To make it easy to get around, when you open this map, and if this is new to you, if you wouldn't mind, I think for Kelsey, if you click on the map icon on the bottom, you'll see where we're all sitting. I mocked in something where you see yellow dots. Okay, that's where there are some group seats. Yellow dots have outdoor group seats. And I'm going to arbitrarily send you to those places, and I'll ask the faculty if they want to come, but I'll send you over, and I am putting in the chat links that go to different STEM activities. And STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And we hope to always entice some art people over because, as you can see, the art folks really help make everything aesthetic, cohesive, and engaging. So what I'm going to do is put together several of these features. What I'll do is ask the teams to open up the links in their browser and pick one of the activities. There's something called Makerspace, where today with so many materials, people are aggregating resources somewhere from 3D printers to lathes and everything so people can work together. There's something called SketchUp for drawing. There are things that we commonly use in STEM areas. They're not exclusive to that. So I'm going to put that into the chat. I'll ask each team to pick one or two of the links, review them in your group. You'll have 10 minutes, and then come back here in 10 minutes and just be ready to talk about what you observed, whether this might be something you might use, or whether just how you see it might be helpful to a teacher or somebody developing in these other areas. So it's to expand your brain a little, to get you thinking about some of the things we cover. We have a STEM certificate as well, where people take the core courses and then two other courses, which allows them to experiment with technologies and practices and design and lesson development and assessment, more in these STEM focused areas. So we have arts, we have STEM, and hopefully we combine them with STEAM. So I'm putting the materials in the chat. And if you remember, if you click the chat nearby chat button, you should be able to actually go to these links. They will open up when you click them, they'll open up in your browser. So you'll still be in the virtual space. So what I'm going to do now is send you into some teams, and I'm just going to look at who's in front of me and talk amongst yourself from Coffee Talk, if any of you remember that. As I said, my son was a stand-up comic. Okay, talk among yourself in the teams, and I'm going to ask Gina, yeah, Gina remembers, Gina, Jeremy, and Eduardo. Gina, Jeremy, and Eduardo, if you would open the map, and how about I send you over to the amusement park area, which is the bottom right yellow dot. So if you three go over there, open up, I will let you choose which or several STEM activities you want to look at. We might have some duplication, but that's fine. Go over there, spend some 10 minutes together, seeing what some of those things might be, and come back. Steph Buto, John Silhavy, and let's put Saley Davis. If I could put the three of you together, and Saley is actually our helper, send you to the, let's send you to the yellow dot on the top right, which is an island, and that yellow dot is right below a big red box. So if you three would go up there, choose your favorite, talk amongst yourself, come back and be ready to debrief. Saley, John, and Steph. Saley, John, and Steph. Okay. Now let's get
Hi, Saley.
Hello.
So you thought.
Let me take a look and see what the list. Okay, that I've played around with. Yeah, a friend of mine's big into 3D printing, so we're planning on playing around with that in a little bit once we get some time. Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured that, just kind of looking at some of the designs that we've seen. It really can't go too crazy because of the load time.
Saley, what is maker spaces? Sure.
Sure. Okay, let's take a look.
I'm not getting the link up, are you?
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, wait, here it comes.
Laser cutting. Paper circuits. That's Yeah, it looks like it's the kind of place where all that technology is in one place and that anybody can use it, because with the prices of all this stuff, it's much easier just to create the design at home and then bring it to a place where the actual item can be built.
I'm just trying to bring up the link. I'm having trouble with the browser, I guess. Okay, I can hear you now.
You guys okay over here? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Just see what, and we'll see you back, in a couple of minutes. Just want to make sure everybody knows where they are and how to get to the next step.
Sure. It's the first time I've ever seen a laser cutter in one of those places. Those things are pretty pricey. Well, I gave a presentation at the National Model Railroad Association, the regional convention, and my comment about 3D printing was that the services are many, but the skills are few. And just kind of encouraged people to get out there and start experimenting and to share what they had, because then once you get some basic shapes, then we could start getting more complicated. Some people were happy with the idea, some not so happy with the idea.
All right, let's head back.
When I save them, it automatically, I didn't go in and append a 0. So it's, why don't you get talking to people? I have to, that was something, it's the way it's looking mathematically at the slide numbers. Okay, you're right. I will try to fix that. The group's coming back. I want them to try to debrief, but I'm going to see if I can talk and chew gum at the same time, see if I can fix that. But Mark, if it takes me a moment, can you start like addressing it and I will fix the slides behind you? Because I've got this group reassembling and I need to fix that. That's my mistake. I'm sorry. You're not crazy. It's me. Okay. All right. I just have to change the numbering sequence. Yes, I have been crazy for a long time. And why do you think I'm still doing this? Everybody's known that. It's just now documented. Okay, I'm going to turn my mic off. And when everyone comes back, I'll ask them to tell me about how they're going to teach STEM. Also, if we don't really talk too much about the STEM while I'm trying to do this, we can just talk about the experience of people breaking out into groups and talking in groups. Okay, do we have most everybody back? Let's see. I'm trying to get a different view here. I'll give it another minute. I'm re-uploading some slides on the other side of on my other computer right now. So, well, I should say on my same computer in another application. I was doing magic. I hope, Mark, do they work right now? I was throwing a curveball to my dear colleague. Does I think I got it right this time. Okay, while we're waiting, we have just a couple minutes, not so much to debrief about the STEM, but maybe I could just get you to type in the chat. How was your experience now working in a small group where you could actually talk and interact and not just hear us? You know, we tend to be tops down. We're teachers. How was it when you actually could break into small groups? Could you maybe type in the chat since we are? Yes. Okay, Patrick, like being able to speak personally. Jeremy was still typing, but that's okay, typing personally. He might have had, did you find the team helpful? If you got stuck with communicating with one another, sometimes I think having somebody who can type. Okay, John talked about 3D printing and enjoyed it. That's, again, these things kind of get grouped under STEM, but there's no reason that these things aren't a lot more universal. It's just we've kind of put it into the STEM bucket. And we typed more than we spoke. Traditionally or originally, people did come in and just type because the voice and speech features only came in, I'd say, about 5 years ago. And if you go to any international groups, you're going to find that they often just type. They text one another. When you go to sign into Kitely, you'll see come a list of meetings that are going on. We'd encourage you to join some of those. I'm trying to read. Eduardo decided together they were going to review SketchUp. Okay, we mostly lost track of time. I hope that's because you were having a good time. And we want to use these environments to get out of the hierarchical, teacher-driven, and get more towards students talking. And we do try to do that in our classes. It's just our residency tends to be a little top-down. And yes, Richard, you were actually able to talk to one another. And we're probably going to move back into the mode now for Mark Lewis, who's truly our expert in Unity. And he's going to entice you you talked about immersion. We'll encourage you to, when we finish up today, stay on. As you know, this island, Marion, is my workshop island. You can always come here. It's always open to students. It's open to everybody. And I think come here and meet with people. If you take our courses, you might be creating your own islands. We will scaffold you into how you build islands. So you don't have to feel intimidated if you're not quite artistic enough yet. We'll be bringing that in. So this is to set a high bar for you to come in and help us get to the next step. In the meantime, though, I'm going to throw the baton over to Mark, who will be concluding our conference. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep on putting out the link. We would certainly appreciate you helping us find ways to keep on improving this process. And I'll turn off my mic, and I've been trying to record this, so there should be a recording that we can send out later as well. And Mark, I think I fixed that for you now. And anyway, so I'm turning my mic off, and it's all yours, Mark.
Okay, I'm hopefully going to be able to control this without too many glitches. So I called this game design and the Unity game engine from noob to network games, because what I'd like to try to do today is to give you sort of a path to follow if you're not familiar with Unity, or if you've just started out with it, to get to a point where you can actually make a network game that you can play on 2 different computers that will play over the internet. It would be a very simple game, and it uses the tutorials that are in Unity, but we'll talk about that. Now, let's see if this changes. Yes. So this is the URL for the PowerPoint, and you can download it if you want to. I suggest doing that if you can run them both. If you have 2 screens and you can run these both side by side, that would be good. Some of the screens I have in this PowerPoint there's some detailed information that might be hard for you to see. So if not, you can review it later and just watch it here. Let's see. What am I looking at? Okay. So the next slide here. So what is Unity? It's basically a complete package for creating games and all kinds of related applications. It's one of the most popular game design engines, which means that it supplies you with everything all in one place that you need to create a game or to create some other kind of application that is such as a simulation. It is used in approximately, according to their statistics, 50% of the games worldwide. You often see them. I have an iPhone, so I often see games that are built in Unity. on my iPhone, it pops up the little Unity screen. The other engines that are out there that are popular is UDK or Unreal Engine. And also you'll see, if you're a gamer, you'll probably see CryEngine as another one. That's sort of, I would say Unreal is number 2 and CryEngine is a 3 or a 4. There's a couple others out there too. There's also some open source game engines as well that are out there. The problem with those is you're probably not going to have the support structures that you need. So I would steer you towards Unity. For one thing, it's a skill that many employers look for. So if you know how to use it, you might be able to actually get some work using it in a small game company or a large game company. Let's see. Don't think that advanced. Sorry. Let's see where we are.
It could just be a little laggy.
Yeah. So this is just an example of some of the games that it's on their site. You can go look at this. There's a whole variety of different games that they feature. Some of them are full 3D. Some are more illustrative. Some are more 2D. It can be used to develop. So I think people often think of game engines as developing things like first-person shooters, but you can have platformers, you can have top-downs, you can have every kind of game that you want to develop in Unity. It does both 2D and 3D without a problem. Let's see if I can get to the next slide. I don't think that advanced. There we go. So again, this is just showing some of the types of games that you can develop in Unity. 2D mobile games, very popular, and now, of course, they're also doing instant games for small messaging apps and other types of platforms. And then for education, it's used widely. There's one of the newer technologies is the HoloLens, which is a mixed reality. You can see that in the picture, there's a gentleman wearing the HoloLens. It's basically a Windows 10 computer with a heads-up display on it, and it imposes an augmented reality on top of reality, and you can interact with it. It's probably the most integrated AR platform out there, but you can also use it, of course. I think you heard how you can use it for other forms of AR using mobile phones and tablets and that kind of thing. It can be used for all kinds of VR applications, which for a variety of different VR products, all the way from Google Cardboard up to the more sophisticated ones, HTC Vive, anything else that's out there. And then, of course, it can be used for simulations. It doesn't have to be just used for games. You can actually build complex simulations that could be used for training purposes. Now, for Unity, the thing that you want to do is you don't have to pay for Unity. So don't get the Plus plan or the Pro plan. You don't need that to get started. They have a personal free version. It's good for, I think it's 100K of sales, which, of course, for students, that's really not applicable. You're probably not going to be selling your games right away. But if you do develop a game and you start a company and you're an independent game design company, you can sell your games up to $100,000 a year, I believe it is, before you have to pay them anything. So again, that is a full version of Unity Game Engine. So you can do anything in the personal version that you can do with the other versions, the Pro and the Plus version. So it's not limited in the way some other versions of game engines are, like for example, Game Maker offers a free version, but you can only build just so much in it, and then you have to actually pay for it to really start to use it as a real tool. The other major platforms are also following that model. I believe Unreal, I'm not sure what their cutoff is, but Unreal also has a similar plan, and I believe that CryEngine is the same. So if you did want to learn those platforms, you could also get them for free. Let's see. So this is the Unity game interface, which is if you haven't used 3D programs or you haven't used programs like this, it can appear fairly intimidating. I'm not going to go into too much about how to use this. It's really out of the scope of this talk, but I placed a simple cube in the middle just to sort of give you some idea that that's sort of where your workspace is in the middle. That's where you would build things. And as you build things out on the left-hand side, you see that the cube is highlighted. That's where all of your game objects would appear. It looks similar to Blender, and I just point out that Blender puts a cube in the middle when you open it up, usually, unless you set it otherwise, whereas Unity, you just end up with a blank screen. And then on the right-hand side, there's an inspector that has all of the different attributes that a particular game object would have. So, for example, you could set the position of an object. This is at the center of this world, which is 0, 0, 0. But I could move that around on the X, Y, and Z axes, which you see those little arrows correspond to the X, Y, and Z axes. You could scale it, you could rotate it, you could add materials to it, so it's not just a gray cube. You could turn it into a rock or a sand or tile or glass. Any kind of, it could be a cube of water if you wanted to do that. So let's see. All right, so for getting past that sort of intimidating interface, Unity offers a lot of free training. And it's a good place to start because they start you out without having to learn any programming. They supply you with all the assets, so you don't have to create them. And you can go in and just get started in it, build a 2D game, a 3D game. And as you work your way up, it gets a little bit harder, and eventually they'll get you into scripting, or coding, and that's in the C# language. But you can do a lot without having to learn C#. You can get started and do quite a bit of prototyping if you want to, without having to do that, learn that language. Some of the topics that you might learn about Unity would include designing scripting, which is C#, audio, how to use audio, how to attach audio to different objects. So you might have audio, some of the built-in objects have, the cameras have like, the one that's where you walk around has like a walking audio. So as you move your character around and walk, it already has the walking sound built in of footsteps. There's another one for a car that has all the sounds built in for the car as you move the car. So you could learn how to attach your own sounds. When you click on something, if you turned a doorknob, for example, that you built, it would make a door click sound. You could learn how to design user interfaces, which would be everything would be around the game space. So that might be how it displays the scores, how you control different things. Navigation would include, in Unity, what you're building are scenes. So or levels, they would correspond to levels. So how to get back and forth between those levels, for example, might be one thing you would learn. Physics, there's all kinds of physics that can be programmed in, how objects interact with each other and how you control them. So if you shoot a bullet, how far does it go? How does it bounce off of the object? Does it penetrate the object? And so on. And animation, and then of course mobile, and then so these are the basic topics that you would go through or could go through. I'm going to skip that slide actually. So I'm going to show some work that was taken from this course, which is a course I recommend from Udemy, if you can get it on sale. This is showing the sale price of $10.99. That 5 hours was yesterday, so it went up in price. Udemy is a great place to go to get training materials, but only if you get it on sale, because sometimes the courses cost $100, $200. They can be ridiculously priced at full retail, but they always have sales, and they always have things for between $9 and $15. So if you sign up at Udemy and you wait, you'll start getting emails, and they'll tell you when different things are on sale. And usually the average price is around $10 to $11. So this is a 2-hour course. What I liked about this course was it got you up and running really quickly. And I'll show you what it's going to teach you basically, and how to, it had no programming in it. It's using all the built-in assets. So if you want to kind of really get started quickly and you don't mind spending $10, this is a good course to go to. Other places that you can go for training are, of course, on Unity, and then our own lynda.com if you're a student here. I would say also, as far as the length of this course, what was nice about this was you could do it in an afternoon. So you would get, if you have a free Saturday or Sunday afternoon, you can get in and work through the whole thing and come out with a working knowledge of how to use Unity. Lynda.com, sometimes I find they have some really good courses, but sometimes it varies from instructor to instructor, but they're free if you're an ESC student, so that's an advantage there. So in this course, one of the things you could learn to do is to basically, one of the very first things you do is create a maze, a complex maze from a single cube. You start out with a cube, you duplicate it, you change the shape of the cube, you change the location of the cube, and you work around until you have a complex maze created. And then you add some spotlights that are built in. These are all tools that are built into Unity, don't require any programming. There's a point light, there's a way to put in a camera so that you can walk around and it makes the footstep sounds. And it looks like this when it's actually playing. So in Unity, you have the previous view is sort of your workspace view, and if you click on the play button, then you can actually test and play the game right there inside of Unity. So if this were a live scene, I'd be able to use my keyboard controls to walk around this maze and see what it looks like, and I would hear the footstep sounds while I was doing that. So it has built-in cameras of different types. So there's like a first-person camera, which is what you see here. There's a third-person camera that where you would stand and you would sort of back away from a character, sort of like what we have right now in Kitely, or at least in my view, where I see myself in front of me and I move around. That would be a third-person view. But if I rolled my mouse button, I could actually get to a first-person view in the Firestorm viewer. They had built-in textures, so any kind of texture that you have that you might want to apply, from outdoor type of textures, natural textures, to man-made textures, or you can make your own. This tutorial, they supply you with them. And so you can make things that look like realistic structures. There's a brick texture. You learn how to apply that to the cubes so that they're the correct size, and they're not too big and they're not too small. Then the other thing which is in this tutorial, but again, there's probably other tutorials at Unity that may do similar things. You learn how to make an island. And this is using a special terrain game object that allows you to essentially paint on depressions. So if you had valleys, and you could paint those in, or if you had mountains, you could paint those in. And then also what you see here is a water texture which is applied, and it actually, when you do that, when you create a depression in the terrain, the water actually flows into it. So in the middle you see a lake where the water, because the plane for the water was at the same, slightly lower than the plane for the terrain, it just sort of flows in when I create a depression. And I was able to like paint in the shoreline around the edges of this terrain, then paint in the mountains. And then you'll see that the mountains actually have a texture, like a rock texture in them. So here's a rendered view playing the game. And so in this exercise, you use a pre-built car model, which you can drive around. The car makes sounds. If you speed up, it sounds like it's speeding up. If you suddenly hit the back key, the tires squeal as if you're hitting the brakes, and it slows down. You can drive it around. It makes acceleration sounds with the engine sound, and it uses the standard ASWD keys, which are standard for gaming, or the arrow keys, and that's all pre-programmed into this particular model. It's all built in, so you don't really have to do anything to get started and create a little place to drive around in. And so it's a fun way to get started with Unity without having to worry too much about programming. So now the other thing you can do with these is once you create a game, you can build and run it. So you have a wide variety of places to take your games, and these would be all standalone games, single player. And so one of them is WebGL. So I can generate a 3D game, all the files necessary to run a 3D game on the web. So you do build and run. It creates a folder filled with all those files. You would take that, you would upload that to your web host, and then you could send that link out to whoever, and they could go on and play the game online as a single player game. Now, there might be some performance issues. The more complex, the more textures, that kind of thing. You'd have to see how that plays out on the web and how much it could handle. But a simple game maze like this would play fairly well, I think, on the web. And then this is just showing. It's hard to see this. It's hard to see the WebGL. That was actually a screenshot from my browser, and that's how it appears inside your browser window. This is a screenshot of a standalone Windows app. So again, it's like you do build and run. You choose Windows, Linux, or Mac, and it creates a file folder filled with an application. You can double click on it. It opens up, and you've got your game running on your screen on your computer. So you could also take that and distribute that if you want to on a CD or whatever, however you choose to distribute it. And some other people could play it. So it's basically the same game. Over on the left, you can kind of see the file structure. If you look closely, it has foundations is what you actually double click on to run and play the game, and then there's the different files that go with it. So if you want to get to the point where you can create a multiplayer game, the first thing you have to do is get comfortable with the Unity interface. So going through a couple of tutorials will help you to do that. You need to take enough courses so that you're comfortable creating scenes, working with the various materials. So that would be things that might apply colors or textures, working with the cameras and the lighting, the different things that are there. And part of that also will include getting those things in to Unity, because not everything is automatically installed in Unity when you actually first start it up, but you can go out and get those assets and bring them in. So, and there's reasons why you don't want to have everything. That all takes up space. The more assets you bring in, the bigger the game size is going to be, the bigger the files are going to be. So that creates some issues. You ultimately would only want to bring in what you need to bring in. But when you're starting out, it's okay to sort of follow the instructions. It's just say bring in all the trees, even though you might only use one tree. But you can be selective about what you bring in. Understanding what prefabs are, which is a way of constructing game objects. Usually they're complex game objects made out of more than one thing. It's basically a way of grouping these objects together and then using that to spawn something. Often that's the way it's used. So you might, for example, make a bullet object that's a prefab, and that might have, you would use that to spawn multiple bullets. So as you're shooting something, you're not loading one actual bullet at a time. It's sort of creating clones of itself, clones of the prefab. And each one of those is a child bullet coming out at whatever you're shooting at. You also would probably want to know how to add simple scripts or pre-built scripts to the game objects, and adding something called components. So these would be things that would be taught in some of these courses that you would work your way through, so that you get comfortable enough so that when you get into the intermediate courses, you'll know what they're talking about. So the tutorial that I suggest if you want to create a multiplayer game that's free is the one that's on Unity. There are some on Udemy, and there may be some, I haven't checked lynda.com to see what they have, but this one works with the Unity multiplayer environment, and it takes you through, and it's intermediate because you need to know how to do some of the things which I just talked about in the previous slide, how to get them in, because it just assumes you know that. So it might say add a component to this game object. So you need to know how to do that, because it's going to assume you know how to go and add and find a network component, for example, and how to pick the right one and get that added correctly. You can work through this probably 2 afternoons. If you're diligent, maybe 3, as long as you're comfortable with the interface. And so let's talk a little bit about what happens in a network game that's different from a standalone game. So in a standalone game, you've got a single player, they downloaded the application. It's sort of like software that's running on somebody's computer. So with a network game, you might have 2 games. Somebody's your friends, different location, across the county, across the state. They have the game loaded on their computer. You've got the game loaded on your computer. And so you two want to play a game across the internet. So you both have local clients. They have the game objects for the game in them. They have the game environment. They have all the assets, all the textures, all the programming scripts to go with it. All that stuff's built in locally. And it's not unlike what we have here in Firestorm, where basically Firestorm is the local client. So when you go into Marion Island, what it does is it loads all the assets for Marion Island in onto your computer, so that you get better response time. So the reason you want to have all the stuff needs to be or should be on your computer as opposed to being up on the network, because it takes time to get things off of a network. So the more things you can have in your local environment and your local client, like in Firestorm or in the game, the better performance you're going to have in your game. So the things that change in the game, so like your player might be one, you as a player moving around. And I'm using the first-person shooter because that's sort of what, or the shooter environment, because that's what the sample does. It's not that I have a particular fondness of shooters one way or the other. It's just what they use as the example. So you're moving around, your friend's moving around, you're shooting bullets, he's shooting bullets. If the game is not network aware, then you don't see, you could both be sort of in the same place, but not seeing what's happening on the in the game world. You're both sort of in your own separate but parallel universes of the game world. So what you have to do is to make your game objects, any game object that's going to move or change in gameplay needs to be synchronized for all users. So there's the illustration on the screen is basically saying you've got a player, an enemy, and player 2 in client 1. The same thing's in client 2. As things change, if player 1 moves, the server is what helps keep things synchronized between client 1 and client 2. So player 2 sees player 1 move. and player 1 sees player 2 move, and if there's an enemy out there that they're both fighting, you both see it moving. So everything's kept in synchronization, including things like shooting. So if you're shooting something and it dies and it disappears, then that's all kept in managed. So in Unity, network game objects have what's called a network identity component that helps it to talk to the server. And the game itself has a network manager, which helps to synchronize the creation and destruction of different game objects, such as bullets or other things like that that might appear or disappear, enemies that appear. When you go over a trap door, an enemy appears, for example. Then that would be managed by the network manager so that you both see that, if it were some kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons game. So let me just go. Okay, so this shows on my screen, on my computer, for testing purposes, what you can do when you go through this tutorial is actually run 2 different versions of the game on your computer. It's really better if you have 2 screens, but I have this set up as 1 screen, and it would still work. So basically what we're looking at here is this very simple tutorial that creates enemies, which are the black characters with mohawks, and then 2 players. So on one screen, the blue player is on one side, on the right side, in the foreground screen. That would be a player. And the other player is in white. And then in the Unity window, which is also running as running the game, it's reversed. So if I were to move, depending which screen I'm in, if I were to move the player, it would update the same on the other screen. As I move the player on one screen, it would update on the other. As I destroyed an enemy on one screen, it would be destroyed on the other one. We would see bullets. If I shot bullets, then the other person sees it on their screen. So the network manager, this is just an example of what it looks like. And I'm not going to try to explain everything that's on here, but one of the things you see here on the screen would be the prefabs. Spawnable prefabs are bullets and enemies. Set up, when I press the spacebar key, it spawns a bullet from a location which is where the gun is. The gun is actually just a cylinder. So it spawns the bullet out of that, and it gives it a vector or a direction, and it travels at a certain fixed speed, so in that direction. And then after a certain amount of time, there's a control in the script that destroys the bullet. And then the same thing with enemies. So as enemies are in this game spawned right at the beginning, and they're static, they don't do anything. But you could just as easily program those so that they were able to move around sort of as non-player characters and sort of maybe interact with you. Maybe if you got closer, they moved away, something like that. You could program all of that kind of logic into that. Let's go to player prefab. So here in the player prefab, there's what's called a network transform script. And that one basically is what updates the server with your location. So if you move, it sends that information out to the server, which then sends it out to the other clients. So and there's a health script which also shows your health. So if in this game it's sort of set up so that you can shoot the other player too. So if I'm being shot at by the other player, my health drops, and that script has a network component. It says network send interval 0.1, so it keeps updating my health constantly out to the server and out to the other players so that they can see my little health bar at the top changing to red as they shoot me. So they get this immediate feedback that they're hitting me with a bullet. And then in the bullet prefab inspector, we see another transform script, which basically is sending the information back about where it is. Transform means includes things like location, if there was a size change, something like that. It would send those are all considered transformations. So in this case, we're really talking about just the location of the bullet, and it keeps updating that bullet location back to the server, where it then sends that information out to all the other clients. And then to make this a multiplayer game that you can play across the internet, Unity offers, now on the inspector, I'm not going to go back to it, but next to the inspector is a services tag. And in the services means Unity services. And one of the Unity services is the multiplayer service, which enables you to set up internet gameplay for up to 20 people for free. Although you have a maximum of 20, so you could have, let's say, 2 different games, each with 10. And then you've used all of your allotment up. So it doesn't have to be 20 people just coming into one game, although it could be. So if you wanted to set up something for like a class, if your class was small enough, then you could set it up so up to 20 people could come in and interact in that space for free without having to do anything. Now, there's a big caution on this because unfortunately, Unity is phasing this service out. So there's about 2 years, I think if I read it correctly, maybe 3, that this service will be available. And it may not be supported after the 2018 versions of Unity. So that's something to be, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, what some alternatives will be. But that's something to be aware of. It's still kind of a good option if you just want to get started and you don't. It's probably the easiest way to get started with this without having to fiddle around with incorporating a third-party service. So I'd suggest using it. Just don't get too married to it because you might have to revise all of your game scripting for something new later on down the road. But it would be good for some prototypes when you're learning. Now there's something, I'm pointing this out. There's the way that you turn on, once you set up the multiplayer services, as you go through the tutorial, you learn how to use a special heads-up display for testing your game on your computer. So you can set one up to be a client and one to be a server or a host rather, and one to be a client. That's all on your local computer, and that's where you can kind of test out the gameplay by clicking back and forth between the screens to see if okay, it's working over here. If I move this and I shoot, and I click over on this screen, I move this and I shoot. They're both working. It's updating correctly. That's the local way to do it. It's not real clear, which is why I put this in here. It's not really clear how to actually set up the internet game. So if you have 2 computers at home, what you would do is you would go through the tutorial, you'd get it all set up, you would test it out locally on one computer, and then take and do a build and run to create a client, put it on a flash drive, copy that folder over with all that information in it to another computer, and then you and somebody else, or just you, could then connect those 2 computers together over the internet and actually play the game on the internet. Or by using the internet. So the way you would do that, just to review it quickly, is instead of following your instructions for using the host and the client, you would click on the Enable Matchmaker, and you would create an internet match on one computer, and then on your other computer you would do Find Internet Match, and then you would join. So as long as you set up this game inside of the Unity multiplayer for whatever number of players you want to use, someone has to go in and initiate the first step to create the internet match, but then after that, everybody else can join in and play wherever they are in the world. So just go to the next slide. So one of the things that you may or may not have noticed, as I talked about, is I didn't talk about voice and chat. And so we're kind of used to, from this environment that we're in here in Firestorm, it does a lot of stuff for us automatically. I'm able to talk to you now. I'm able to chat with you. As Eileen said, I guess the audio portion is more recent, 5 years or so, but it's all handled for us. It doesn't, so you can go and create your islands and do whatever you want to in your islands. You don't have to worry so much about whether or not you're going to be able to talk to the people that are on your island or chat with them, because that's all handled by Firestorm automatically. It's all part of Kitely. We don't have to worry about it. It's not quite that way in Unity. So in Unity, if you want to have voice, real-time voice, or you want to have a text chat function, then you have to go to a third party and add it. And of course, there's always a cost with these things. But there is one out there, one of them that I haven't checked them all, but one of the products that's out there is called Photon. Their URL is at the bottom. You can get it if you download the slide. And they do have free trials with limited numbers of players. They seem to be mostly around 20 players maximum in a game. And this is also an alternative for using, for testing multiplayer games. Unity, so as the Unity multiplayer is phased out, you could turn to this product as an alternative. And it has a free version for that as well. So for students in particular, there will still be options out there, or even faculty that want to develop sort of little small pilots. There are options out there at this point that will be free for multiplayer and for voice and chat. It's more complex. It's going to be another level of complexity to add this to your game. So just to make you aware of that. So it's not as simple as it is, let's say, here when we're here in Kitely. And then another product, just to show you what's out there, is the Dissonance voice chat. That one's a flat fee for $75, and you can add voice chat to your game, and it's available, but you would still need to have the network side taken care of. So right now, you could use multiplayer and Dissonance voice chat, but down the road, that might not work. And then you'll have to still get your multiplayer from somewhere else and incorporate that in. So the Unity store, also just to point out, the Unity store has a lot of free and reasonably priced assets available that cover just about anything that you need to do. So you can get free buildings, you can get free models of cars, all kinds of stuff, airplanes, different things, furniture if you need to. All of that's available in Unity in their store. So you don't have to learn how to do 3D modeling in addition to learning how to use the game engine program. Those are available for varying levels of prices. There are a number of pretty good assets available for under $20. So it's not like you have to spend a fortune if you're trying to build a game. You can usually go out and find something for a reasonable price. So we've reached the end of the talk. My contact information is up there, email. So if you have questions, you can email me, of course. The URL is up there as well for the PowerPoint, if you didn't get it before. And I'm teaching a course, I'll do a little plug for it, called Creating Communication, which is spelled wrong, interestingly enough, and meaning with virtual game worlds. And that's in the spring. And it's going to be very similar to what I just covered, at least in the technical side, where we will go through and create a network game. You'll have the freedom to sort of not have to build with little capsule men as a tutorial. We'll move beyond that, and you'll be able to build something a little more complex than that, that's networked, and you can test it out. And it could be a learning game or whatever, but it'll be available for different people to play on the internet across different locations. So I guess that's it. Does anyone have questions? I don't think I have to look at this anymore. Actually turn around.
Actually, I just have a question. That sounds like an interesting course. Is that the game design course in the graduate program, or is that something different, the course you just mentioned?
This is going to be a different course than the game design program. The game design in the graduate program is focused on learning and simulations and games for learning. So this will be a little broader and more focused. It'll have some theory side to it in addition to the applied side. So we'll be looking at a little bit, thinking a little bit about the theory behind all of this as well.
But can they take it for graduate credit? I want to see if we could
yes,
fit it into
it's
Mallet. Okay.
It's a cross.
Good.
I believe it's set up for cross registration for undergrad and grad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, part of it.
These folks will be talking to their advisors too, so that's something to know.
There's a residency that's happening on the undergrad side, so it's part of that, but it's also cross-reg.
Okay, that's good. So do they physically have to go to that residency to be able to take that course?
No, that residency is a virtual residency. So to participate in that part of it, no, because we have people coming from all over the world for that. It's open to the international program, I believe.
Oh, good. Okay. I'll get more info from you on that too, and follow up.
It's the digital residency. It's being run by Rihanna Rogers is coordinating that along with Manuka Case and the coordinators of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and digital studies. And I'll also be contributing an undergraduate course to that, which is the digital storytelling course. We'll be connecting in as well. So I believe that we have a cross selection of studies that will be a part of the program and integrated into the residency, and that there will be some crossover opportunity for graduate studies with this as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mark. But in the meantime, I interrupted too. I'm sorry, Nicola. Questions from the audience?
Yes, is there a list of spring classes available yet? I have not looked.
Yes, it is under term prep. Well, I should say, actually, I've been working a few bugs out of that. We had some issues with courses that didn't get listed. I'll be not sure who everybody's coordinating. Yes, the courses for the spring are listed, and we just had a few that had to be updated. So you'll be having conversations with your advisors. And for those of you, all of you here are pretty much still in your first semester. So before you sign up, be sure you talk with your advisor, because we have some core courses we want you to really get before you get to the advanced ones. And what you were seeing here today tend to be the more advanced courses. We have the the one where you develop your own virtual reality environment like this. We have Mark's course with the game design. Nicola has several courses that she has in virtual immersion and identity. So I think you'll want to talk to your advisor too before you sign up. And your advisor will be getting out some notes, and I'll be getting out a general note about what's available. And we do have our catalog that shows you broadly what's available, and we'll be getting out a reminder about what's available this semester. So we do owe you that. And before you register for undergraduate courses, we want to, we want to be sure you're getting credited towards the Mallet program as well. So I think we'll have some conversations with your advisor if you don't see it right in the Mallet catalog. So we'll talk to you about that. But I hope you're all intrigued and want to get more involved with these different programs that we have. And not to diminish, we also have our core. We have the Learning Management System course, which Mark generally runs. Dr. Alon has a course for advanced design after you're finished your core. So we have a lot more that we really haven't discussed here. We were just presenting kind of the courses that are moving towards the next step of design, but we have many core courses still, and we'll be inviting you to take a lot of them. Yeah. Oh, Nicola, did you want to mention your identity course? 'Cause I think you're running that this spring. Now, Scott, who's asked, I don't know. Yeah.
I'll be happy to just mention that. So for those of you interested in exploring virtual and immersive to a different level, so Dr. O'Connor's courses are really, they're hands-on virtual practicums. You really learn what it takes to build virtual worlds, and you get to get in there and dig in there and build them. And then my advanced learning design course is really not just virtual worlds design. It could be any type of, it's basically integrated learning project design, where you can use a variety of tools to integrate a project of your choice into whether it be a virtual worlds environment or other 2D or 3D environments. I'm teaching right now digital media arts and technologies, where you get to do the kinds of arts projects I described earlier. That will be you'll be able to take that again next fall, because right now it's running and it won't be offered in the spring. In the spring, digital identity and virtual communities allows you to do some really fun ethnographic integrated participant observation research in virtual communities. You learn all about virtual communities as you experiment with having different avatars and going into different communities and then describing your experience. And you can do that in a variety of different ways, in all kinds of different virtual world environments, including games. I had one student choose the World of Warcraft as their primary environment. So anyway, that would be what you would be able to do if you take the Digital Identity and Virtual Communities course. There are lots of opportunities for the type of exploration that you could do in that particular course. It would be individualized to your interests.
Okay, so I'm hoping that we've inspired you with a number of questions about directions you can take, the specific courses that might fill out your degree plan. We will have you developing a plan. I think pretty much everyone I see here is fairly new, so they're developing plans, or we have a few that are fairly far along. As a matter of fact, Jennifer and Jeremy and Steph, I don't see Steph here right now, are actually going on this residency had a follow-up piece for those who wanted to go on in either augmented reality, gaming, or whatever. Well, there are some prereqs, and I think that's where I think you want to have that conversation with your advisor. And so we'll be looking, although you can look in the catalog, and if there is a required prerequisite, it's listed. Most of our courses, certainly the Developing Virtual Worlds Practicum does not have a prereq, but we do assume a certain amount of ability to work independently. We're not going to be hand-holding you and telling you exactly which button to click. We have tutorials, etc. But I think everybody in this group, from what I know, is quite capable of joining most of our courses. And if the prereq exists, it would be listed in the catalog. So, yeah, I do think that we are able to scaffold in enough so that you can get a good head start. And we'll know pretty early on if you're really not up to it, and we'd let you know. But I want to thank everybody, and I will ask you all, if you can mark on your calendar, I'll try to get the date out. The follow-up to this is going to be actually December 5th. And we're running it a little bit differently than we had originally intended. We have 3 people that are going to be going off to develop augmented reality. And I'm going to put a link in as you leave, so you can see what I developed this summer. And it's not into the entire area, but you're going December 5th. Richard and I will get out some notifications. We're going to have several of our students who are completing their program are going to be showcasing the projects that they did for their final project. And we're going to have Jennifer, Jeremy, and Steph showcasing what they will have done as a result of their augmented reality course. And Mark gave you a good segue to show that when you're in virtual environments, you can get preloaded environments that have a lot of features already there. So you're not starting as much from scratch, but these folks are going to be starting from scratch and developing an application in Unity with a plugin that allows them to bring in augmented reality. So they're going to be challenged, and we'll be inviting you to hear how far they got. And it's going to be very unique to each person's situation. So I'll send that out again, but December 5th, it's in the evening. It's just coming by and talking to them. We won't be just lecturing at you. It will be they're explaining to you what they did. And so it actually will probably be right here in Kitely, right on Marion Island. We're going to set up a little booth. And remember, you can walk around the buildings here on Marion. If you go into the buildings, you'll see a lot of work that former students have done in a variety of different contexts. So we want to thank you. I'm going to put in the chat text. And yeah, oh, thank you. I'm going to also, at the end of this, I will send out through an email as well. If you could give us some feedback so we can keep on growing this concept, improving it. And thank you all for coming. I know Saturday is a busy day, and but for some of you, this will be your homework, and I'll be looking forward to your homework back in the class. And we want to start those conversations so that we can get you into some very interesting degree program planning where we'll start figuring out what courses fit best for your particular needs. So you'll be having those conversations with your advisors. Now, if you wouldn't mind looking at me for 3 minutes, the real me, and you'll see why I like the avatar me. But at the end of it, the very tail end, you don't have to watch all 3 minutes. Look at about 2 minutes. You'll actually see some of the avatars that I got to hover over my deck of cards. And we'll use that to see where Jennifer and Jeremy and Steph get. They're going to be doing some very different work. But I thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great weekend. And we'll be sending out a review so that you can give us some feedback. But have fun the rest of the day. Thank you for coming, and I hope that you've all had an opportunity to get to know each other a little better and to get to know some of the faculty. So good night, everybody. I have been taping this. I'll be leaving, and I will make the tapes available later. So thank you, and thank you very much to the faculty who gave of their Saturdays to come in and present. So good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was such a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Bye all. Have a great weekend.
Goodbye.